Hello friends, and welcome to another edition of Transformational Astrology. I'm Henry Seltzer, and we want to talk about this full moon that's coming up this weekend. It's been a pretty wild ride. I think you know, I've been talking about it, that the new moon from the end of June, therefore the July month. The new moon from the 24th of July, therefore this current month of August. And the new moon at the 22nd of August, which will have the lunation cycle that covers most of September. All three, very strong. The feature of this July 24th new moon that was missing from earlier was Uranus being early Gemini, 0 degrees Gemini. And with that, we have Uranus and Pluto, we have Saturn and Neptune, all four, in a very tight trine and sextile configuration. So it's not like if it was a square and a T-square, we'd say, oh my God. And those are the things that get written up in Rick Tarnas's book, Cosmos and Psyche, about the combinations. He says, well, when you have Uranus and Pluto in conjunction, or when you have them in opposition, as it was during the French Revolution, these are the times that we really get these archetypes really beaming in on us very strongly. We have a little bit different now because we have a trine and sextile, so it's a little more positive. There's more hope. There's more ways out. We're not wedded to a terrible path of dire transformation, you could call it, because only through direness and suffering do we really change. And that's the way it is. That's the way we have it, we humans on this planet. But we do have quite a bit of strong influence right now. So let's go ahead and look at the chart of this full moon that's coming up. And so you should be able to see the chart. And this is a chart, with natural houses. So we're starting with Aries. The actual ascendant of this chart on the west coast for 12:55 a.m. in the morning of August 9th, so midnight of August 9th, really when we wake up August 9th, or when we dream, as a matter of fact. So it's, basically a midnight, 1 a.m. Daylight time, full moon. And the rising on the west coast would actually be 3 degrees. This is the rising point, 3 degrees of Gemini. But we're not going to look at that right now, although it is interesting because on the west coast it's even more powerful because Uranus at 1 degree now is rising. But the things to look at in this full moon, of course, we want to look at the sun and the moon, 16:59, almost 17 degrees of Leo and of Aquarius. And we really could ignore the midheaven there because that won't apply to anything but the west coast. So all over, we wouldn't even see this, so we could drop it. But what we can see, in addition to the Leo-Aquarius opposition, which has its own intelligence to it, its own archetypal patterning to it that we will be aware of, that with the sun in Leo, we're a little bit more shining on ourselves. It has to do with ego. It has to do with bravery. It has to do with being like a lion, coming on strong, and glowing and shining with the energy of the sun, and learning how to handle that and be compassionate with it and be not not all over the place with it, kind of contained in ourselves. Well, with that Leo energy comes also the opposition point in Aquarius, which is all different. Aquarius is more about cooperation. It's more about subsuming oneself to the general voice, but still your own voice counts, and so you want to choose with the society you keep the voices that resonate with you, that you feel you can contribute to successfully. But it is recognizing, Leo is also the fifth house. It's also, therefore, creativity, self-expression, as I said. And we want to know how that self-expression lands in the culture. If we're just doing something and we're not actually making anything of it. It's just our own amusement, that's fine, but it is kind of our own private world. But a lot of times when we create, we'd like to think that it has an impact on the society, or what are we up to? In other words, where are we really putting our shoulder to the wheel, let's say, of what needs to happen in the culture? And that's an important factor in this full moon with this Leo and Aquarius opposition. The other thing, though, to mention while we're talking about this here, and by the way, here's what I was mentioning before, Uranus at 1 degree now of Gemini, Pluto moving retrograde, so is backed away from 3 and is now 2 degrees of Aquarius. So that's a very close trine. At the midpoint, roughly, Saturn and Neptune in conjunction. Now Neptune is all pretty close to 2 degrees, so very close sextile to Pluto from Neptune, but the both of these are around 1 degree something, 20 and 50, 15 more, so 35. But they're both, the midpoint is around 1 degree of Aries, 35 minutes, so it's all very tight. 1 degree, 1 degree, 1 degree, 2 degrees actually. But anyway, you can see that is the trine and the two sextiles, Saturn and Uranus, Saturn and Neptune, being at the midpoint of this Uranus-Pluto trine. So that's very, very strong. But one thing, before we get into that any further, one thing to mention is there's also a grand trine in air signs. How do we have a grand trine? Because Mars has just entered Libra. So in addition to all of this, Mars is now at 1 degree also of its sign, which is newly Libra. It has just moved into Libra. In fact, that was on the 6th. And what I feel about the grand trine, even though it's a trine between Mars and Uranus and Pluto, is that this can be actually a little dangerous. You see with Mars, Uranus, often accidents. And to have Pluto in there too, it could be accidental or it could be non-accidental, but it could be dire, it could be transformative, right, with Pluto. Our passions can come up. So we are seeing quite a bit of this on the national stage, are we not? At least I follow the current events more in this country than elsewhere, and certainly in this country. I don't know what's happening in Europe. I don't know what's happening in Japan or China or around the world, but I really don't know much. But I do know that it's on the world stage that some of this is unfolding that we see here with this kind of, I don't want to get political, but this kind of mad king, runaway president, doesn't know what he's up to, and all the evidence that he's kind of shining, what do you call that, gaslighting? Because there's evidence that he doesn't want to, they talked about it for a long time. Let's release the Epstein files. And he was all fine with that until it came to doing it. And then, no, I don't think so. And one legitimate concern there, let's be balanced. One legitimate concern there is there are possibly people in the videos and so on that are not actually guilty of anything. They just happen to be there, or they didn't actually commit a crime, but, they're in that video. Those people are not really in trouble until they're formally charged, until the evidence is assessed, how much complicity was there, pedophilia was there with these particular bigwigs, very, very powerful, rich people, and how much has been hidden and should be revealed, and how many of them should be charged. We don't know. And so releasing the files just the way they are, not only is it what one Justice Department official called pornography, which is not a great idea either, it's also kind of, painting with a black tar brush. Everybody's shown, it may not be appropriate or accurate. So, really what needs to happen is they need to be investigated by an actual competent DOJ, if we ever have one again. And then at that point, they need to be reviewed, and then there could be charges. And that's what really needs to happen. But they're asking now just for blanket release. They just say, enough cover up, we want this information out in the open, and let the chips fall where they may, and let them defend themselves, these bigwigs, these people of power that are caught on this videotape. And I'm not going to name names, but it could be that there would be some very familiar names on that list. So then, that I didn't mean to get so political, but this is such a political time. This is such a time when it's so important that we try to suss out what is the truth of the matter. We're really faced with a time when there is all these claims to be true, so-called facts, which are enunciated oftentimes at the very highest level, and may be just hot air to try to distract or to cover up. And we don't know which is which. And that brings me to a very interesting point as well. Now, we talked about Mars being at 1 degree, contributing to this configuration of outer planets, including Saturn. Well, at 1 degree also is Haumea. And I've always said for many months now, Haumea square Pluto is about the truth. It's about specifically the truth coming out. It's about, let's see what's really going on with the truth. Let's see to the bottom of everything that's Pluto, right? That's going on with this truth or not truth. Because Haumea, being one of these two new nature planets named in 2006 and 2008 by the astronomers, definitely a planet, a type of planet. They say dwarf planet. I call it KBO planet. They are definitely have factors in chart. I've been able to show that Eris is a very strong factor in charts, as important as Pluto, in my book, The 10th Planet. And logically, these guys, which is Haumea, this is the glyph I use, an alternate glyph, and this is the glyph I use for Maki Maki, which resembles somewhat a birdman because it was a birdman in the Rapa Nui culture. Maki Maki is the creation god of that culture and associated with fertility. That's of Easter Island, the Rapa Nui people of Easter Island. And then Haumea is the creation goddess of the Hawaii people and was just identified with nature. It was the sky, the sea, everything. So connection to nature, very important in our human life, in our human culture. And also connection to an internal understanding of natural law, like what's the right way to treat people? Well, treat people the way you yourself would like to be treated is a very good rule for that. It's called the Golden Rule. And it is part of a sort of a natural goodness or a natural intentionality we have all within us. And since it represents that factor, you can see it coming out when it's strongly accentuated in the individual charts. And I've been doing a lot of research on individual charts and how it affects the life and how the life signals that, and you can look for it. So I've been doing all this research and a book is coming out. But what I wanted to say right here, right now, is that in this Pluto connection with Uranus and with Saturn and with Neptune, we also have featured, because here's Uranus at 1 degree, it's a yod. If you take the Uranus at 1 degree, the inconjunct at 1 degree to 1 degree Scorpio, which is Haumea, and then this is the other. This is the sextile over here to Saturn and Neptune. So there's a very strong yod going on, both to. Let's see. I think maybe the yod is effective. Well, anyway, yeah, it's definitely a yod to Haumea. And Haumea square Pluto. So anytime you see this magnified, there's actually an aspect from the moon as well. So I think that's a sesqui. Yes. I'm sorry, it's a biseptile, 3 degree biseptile. So anyway, but there is this really strong square. The square from Haumea and Pluto together. This Pluto-Haumea square is very much accentuated in the new moon. All the new moons have been. The last new moon was at 2 degrees of Leo. That was the one that started us off here on July 24th, right opposite Pluto. So that's a very strong T-square to Haumea, you see. So we do have such an accentuation of Haumea-Pluto and such a realization that Haumea and Pluto together is all about what is the truth, what is the true, and if you're saying what's not the truth, is that you're going to get caught? Is that going to be revealed? Is there some kind of process going on where there's a revelation? That's what was said. That's what might be the lie that was said, and there's but lies get exposed. The difficulty with lying is you have to keep track of what your lie is, right? So with truth, it's simpler. You just say the same story over and over again. But with a lie, you try to say the same story over and over again, and sometimes it gets a little muddled and mixed up, doesn't it? So this is what's happening on the national scene right now, is sorting through what this administration currently is really up to. There's the Project 2025, which was a document that was denied during the campaign by the Republicans. However, it's being adhered to by the administration now that it's in. And so that's one lie right there. They tried to distance themselves, and then they're just going along with that program. They're trying to disrupt things, and it has some maybe beneficial effects. I'm sure there was issues with complacency. Maybe there was waste, fraud, and abuse like they're saying. But anyway, it's a very dicey situation that needs to be, I believe, seasoned liberally with the truth, because if we can establish that or attempt to establish that or try to stick to that and try to be, what do you call it, fact-checking, I think that's the way through. And then, of course, taking a stand. That's IRIS, taking a strong stand for what only you believe, but that's your truth, and stick to it, and then act upon it, as necessary. So those are the factors. IRIS is in a different place. It's not in this configuration. But IRIS and Chiron have been very close, which is the painful situation. And responding to it with your own truth is what the recipe is there. And this is IRIS and this is Chiron. So that's the main message I wanted to give today, that it's a very tough time, that when the 22nd rolls around, which is the next new moon, you might think, well, we'll finally be out of this when this cycle's over, but the actual Virgo new moon is where? 0 degrees Virgo. So now we have, this is what I meant, now we have the yod to Pluto, as well as having still 1 degree, and 0 of Saturn. So we still have the yod to Haumea, the yod to Pluto, we still have this trine configuration, at least for one more cycle, very, very, very strong. And we still have the very close there and now, both in retrograde motion. Things are going to change because Saturn and Neptune are going to back across into late Pisces, and eventually also Uranus will back into late Taurus where it was. So, they're going to break away from these early degrees of the masculine signs that we're seeing now. Not Pluto. Pluto stays in Aquarius. But these guys that are really adhering to this whole thing, making a lot of this right now, are going to back off. I'm not sure whether how Maya stays in Scorpio. And I can in the TimePassages software I can right click, and that tells me that the next station position. It doesn't turn retrograde until February, and that would be at 4 degrees Scorpio. So it's going forward now, and it'll stay in Scorpio. Anyway, yes, so that's what we've got. And just to say, here's the next new moon coming up. It's not right on this. Now, the Leo new moon was exactly opposite Pluto, so we're really in the midst of transformation right now. This is what's really happening, including this full moon, not to forget that. So the full moon that we're in now, it's part of this whole configuration. It's the halfway point to the next new moon at 0 degrees of Virgo. So, and that halfway point, also if you add 15 degrees to 16, you get the 1 degree mark of Virgo. So these things are all kind of combined with each other. And we're still definitely feeling the new moon from the 24th of July. We're feeling that unraveling, very much so. And we will right up to the next new moon. It's a tough time. And when the times are tough and the going gets tough, the tough get going. And that's what we've got to do. We've got to stand up, take our licking, fight for what we need to have, fight for the vision that we'd like to see, remember to be kind to each other. Very important. A lot of us, all of us, I think, have that innate tendency to be kind. And we just got to exercise that muscle. We've got to remember what we stand for. So that's it. We transition back. And I hope that was helpful. It's so important, astrology right now, because we're lost without it. I mean, there's a way that we can look at this going on and we can just be all upset about it, and it's so dire. But really, it's part of a process, and the universe is unfolding in the way it does for a reason. If we were all complacent, just sitting back, everything was cool, money was flowing, the rich were getting richer, you see what happens in that situation. I mean, the rich do get richer and the poor do get left behind. But, we're seeing a great shakeup, which will prevent that, but right now it's just very hard to know what's going on, what's the important thing. We have to keep focusing on that. What's the important thing for you? For how you feel, for how you believe, and just stick to that. That's your truth, and you can't get away from that, and you don't want to, and don't let anybody get you away from it. So keep the faith. Take care.